reminding everyone to please mute. We're going to go back
Yeah, the host of the event does have the ability to mute all calls under the managed participants. So,
and I just put the live stream as well. Thank you, Robert, as well.
You're very welcome.
It is being live streamed right now. If you click on the link that Robert put.
Yeah, the host of the event does have the ability to mute all calls
Right, but
under the managed
it's being
participants.
recorded in some fashion.
And I just put the live stream. Don't see the record being thank you done by anyone right now as well.
Correct.
There we go.
I'll be the meeting host anyway.
危险性的宝贝，
Hey Paolo, you can start the recording now.
你要很接我吗？
Big roll call.
难
So, hey, can everyone please, or Paolo, if you don't mind muting everyone?
Yeah.
Universally.
Hey, people.
Excellent. Okay, so the agenda has been posted in the chat just as a reference, but everyone should already have the link to the agenda document itself. So let's go ahead and kick off the call because it is 1300 UTC. And we're going to use the EOS.io forum test as the method to call roll. If you look in the Telegram channel, there is an example for the command to do so. So that's where we will call roll. So please go ahead and do that now.
How does the public see the roll?
Because it's on the blockchain.
So they have to be monitored. So the public has to be monitoring.
Which channel is that?
So they have to know exactly the block ID that we put that transaction in and then unpack that in order to view the actual information.
I mean, anybody may take the information that's posted in roll and publish it later. It's not an issue.
It'll also be in the minutes. So,
Rick, can you add that to the agenda document? The command that is in the format that's expected. I don't see it easily available.
It was posted yesterday, and it's in the pinned message, but I will post it again here.
Is it in a pinned message?
It is in the pinned message, yes.
Not sure. Oh, in EOS docs, there's a link to there. So, there's an improved version of the EOS.io forum that will make that a lot more simple and like with standard protocol.
Yeah, this is just a test to see if we can start using the blockchain here to actually do this. So we'll improve upon this. This was just the first attempt.
Well, the problem with it is there's no way to see the data. So
It's be solved in the next.
James, if you're having concerns, we can do both then.
Well, that's why I voted against it last time, but everybody else voted for it. That's fine.
For what?
All right, so let's get the meeting going. We're 3 minutes in. Please do it on both. If you'd like to do it on EOS.io forum test, and then also if you want to put it into the Zoom chat itself, if that's helpful for others.
Rick, does someone want to post a link for that? Is what channel were you referring to that it was going to be in from Telegram?
It's in the chat.
Tim, it's the same channel that we've been using, the EOS mainnet BPs. Okay. This isn't new information.
Obviously, it is to some, but the attitude isn't appreciated.
Agreed.
So are we going to just do
today? So for today, the Zoom chatting is okay, right? For the call.
Yeah, I think so.
You guys can see who's, you can see who's posting by doing get actions EOS form test. So it is visible on chain.
Right. So while that's happening, should we kick off the agenda items? So the first one is unregistered token contract. Unregistered tokens. But do we want to start with the referendum contract update, since that seems to be the hot topic?
If Rohan, let's just go in order. If Rohan is on now, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Are you prepared to speak on the
Yes.
unregistered
So
token contract?
I think I can do it quickly. Let me
Great.
share my screen one second. Yeah, we've discussed this before, so there is an update. Let me share my screen. Can you see it? Oh.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So just a quick recap. So that we're talking about the unregistered token holders, the people who haven't registered and fallback didn't apply. So it's a little red thing there. So in terms of tokens, we're talking about 3 million EOS, and in terms of unregistered wallets, we're talking about 20,000 wallets or so on. So accounts. And so the main thing in this call really is we wanted to show you this function which is now ready. We have this switched up. So this is this contract that we have on the system now. We have the link to the GitHub page of EOS Argentina there, and we're talking about the claim function now. There is this, so everything is on chain. The token holders are just requested to go on to generate a big signature, but we'll have to provide them some kind of tool where they would go into their Ethereum, get their Ethereum private key, generate a signature, and then tell us what account name they want, and then the system takes care of everything else. It checks if it's a valid account, it checks the signature, it verifies that the Ethereum public key actually belongs to the person. It does all of that. So it's not too long, and it finishes here. It finally removes the Ethereum address from the EOS IO unregistered database as well.
Rohan, that part you skipped about signing that somehow. Would that be doable with a hardware wallet?
Yes. So this part, yes. So the signature part. So this contract requires a couple of things: a signature and an account name. An account name, the user would pick up an account name and tell the system what they want. The signature is much more complicated. Do you want to talk about it, Minnie? Or Chitty?
Hello. Yes, well, Minnie is not actually here, but we brought Matthias, who is the guy who's been working with us,
yes.
Especially this part, which is a bit more complicated. I don't know if you want to take it from here, Matthias?
Hi everyone. Hi Rohan. Well, basically, the contract, what it's doing now, it's taking a signature as a parameter, and then it extracts the public key from the signature to later calculate the Ethereum address. So the Ethereum address is just the hash of the uncompressed public key. What you get with the recovered key, the intrinsic from EOS, is the compressed public key, only the X point of the point in the curve. So the contract later decompress the public key to calculate the Ethereum address. And that's what is looking in the database to see.
Matthias,
yes.
Can we just add there line 45? That's the message that is signed. It's the Tapos block, so it needs to match the one in the transaction. That's how we get the certainty that the person did sign, something new.
Yeah, exactly. What the person is signing is the reference block number of the transaction itself. So the transaction has to be custom made for him to sign that specific message.
Yeah, perfect. I'm glad Matthias is on the call. He's the best person to ask any questions to.
You scroll down, and the next step, what is done? It's done. It's the same operations that were done on chain launch. If you scroll down there,
yeah.
Now there's all these inline actions.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly the same thing. So it splits into CPU net liquid. It still has the 10 EOS, and then it assigns the same key for owner and active, and then yeah.
Yes, after verifying that the signature, after extracting the Ethereum address from the signature, it checks if it has some unregistered balance in the contract database, and after that, it will make the same process as the boot process. It will split the unregistered contribution into CPU, net, and liquid balance. After that, it will calculate how many EOS it's needed to create an account with 8K of RAM. And later, it will configure the account with the same public key extracted from the signature. So the person that it's using this new web page or this new command line tool, I don't know how it will be instrumented in the future. It will just need to import his private key to his EOS wallet, because the new account, the one that he wants to use for his contribution, will have the same public key configured as the one extracted from the signature. This is the step that you see there that says build authority with just one K1 key. The K1 key is the key that has been extracted from the signature. And after that, you see a lot of inline transactions where you purchase the 8 kilobyte of RAM, create a new account, buy the RAM, use the RAM tokens, and then the bandwidth delegation. Those steps are the same steps that get called when you use Clio's system new account. And the last step, as Roshan was saying, is to remove that information from the database to release the used memory from the contract.
Yeah.
So Matthias, I have a question for you. Why do we want to use the public key from the Ethereum signature? Because it creates a bootstrapping problem, right? Maybe they would like to start with a new public key that they could send on that contract. And some people might have hardware wallets where extracting private keys is a little bit more difficult.
Yes, that's true. I think the idea was to keep it simple because, but we can also add up a new parameter to the function with an explicit public key set by a user. But
would be as secure, right?
Yes.
Oh.
But what you are saying is true for the people that will be signing the transaction using their hardware wallet. So maybe we should add a new parameter that is the public key for the new account.
And also there's one other thing is that someone signing that transaction already has an account, right, necessarily, unless you have them sign through and use the network bandwidth of a website, right? The website, right. Submit that.
Exactly. They don't need to have an account. They can use an account provided by us. But the one that will be doing the rate limiting to not consume every CPU possible for that account will be the website. So it can sign and X transactions per time, but they don't have to have an account, an EOS account. We can provide that account for them.
Okay, and in that case, yeah, okay, no, that's good. That's good. Great, actually. It's awesome work, huh? By the way, it's really neat.
Okay.
Yes.
But maybe the way forward is to add the explicit public key parameter to the contract.
But then you have to trust the website to deal with it properly, right? So there's
yes, you always have to trust the website unless you are verifying the transaction manually, because the website will only give you the website will only call the MetaMask or any other extension, I don't know, to sign a hash. So yes, you are trusting the website.
Right.
Yeah.
So as far as timeline is concerned, can you give us insight into where we are from now until it's sitting in front of a user trying to claim?
Yeah, there are a couple of Matthias has to add this new parameter, and then once it's on, we'll have to all review it, and we'll need 15 BPs to approve it. I don't know how long that'll take. Maybe we could do it next week, and then we'll have to build a website or like tell people how to actually use this. So the earliest I would say is a couple of weeks.
For the website that you're talking about, do we need to build a single site, or can it be up to each block producer and standby to integrate it into something they built on their own?
Yeah, I would say that is a more decentralized approach. So people can choose from any one of the different methods.
But as it is with most things, like one or two are going to step up and do something about it, and the other ones are not. So it doesn't matter, right? People will do it. Some will want to.
I just didn't want to get us hung up on who's going to do the site. It's someone's going to step up and do it.
I do think so. Yeah.
Just want to mention one thing. Another thing, that if the block producers decide to deploy this contract, the account, the EOS IO and RED account where this contract is running must be set to privileged account. That's a sensitive issue, but it has to be that way because the function is issuing new EOS token to purchase the RAM. So besides using the proportional balance that it has in the same account. So it's a two-step process. In the same transaction, the contract will be deployed, and also the account will set to privilege.
So to summarize one of those points, because these are technically Genesis accounts, they are being given the same courtesy that the original Genesis accounts were for gifting them the RAM cost for their account creation. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
And Matthias, the account created will be EOS IO, like every other Genesis account. Is that correct?
Right, correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. So Kevin, to answer your question, I think what we'll need is we have Matthias looking at the code, so that's great. We will then need the block producers to review it. Maybe we could have the contract in place by the next call or immediately after the next call, something like that. I think that might make sense. And then soon afterwards, like operators can start building tools to actually help the unregistered users. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me, as long as everything that we've discussed moves along in the timeline we thought, adding extra parameters to the function, etc., testing it.
Who has tested it yet until now?
Yes, Matthias, I think.
I have.
Okay, so we'll want a bit more tests, and people can hopefully report on their tests. I'll do that for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please let the group know when it's available to play with.
Yeah, perfect. I just want to mention thank you, Matthias, and thank you, EOS Argentina. They did a lot of amazing work, and I was just presenting all of this just because I kickstarted all of this. Okay, thank you, guys. That's it.
Bravo.
Can I ask something about the communication around this? Because it's the 20,000 people that had difficulty registering in the first place. How do we reach them properly? and what languages the website need to be translated in.
Brett, I think that I can comment on that. So we have all established touch points with the community, every single one of us. I think it behooves all of us who take it upon ourselves to reach out to them. It's not my personal recommendation that there be any kind of joint communication or single website created, and then it's everyone's responsibility to get the news out.
Yeah, it's kind of noisy all around, so I think we have to think about this, that we structure it a little bit properly.
Certainly something to at least consider. So just in the interest of time, that was a perfect 20 minutes, and we have 5 agenda items, 20 minutes each would be awesome. So if there are no other pressing questions with this one, are we good to move forward? Okay, thank you very much. So for the second agenda item, we have David Packham of EOS 42 going to discuss what exactly is done about any block producer that is provably in violation of compliance with reg producer or Constitution. Well, specifically the Constitution.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Kevin. I'm just going to share a screen, which is the accompanying document to this. This is actually off the back of some evidence that's started appearing relating to ZBOS, who are, I believe, around about number 16 right now in the top 21. So they're an active block producer. Actually, this is really a discussion, though, that could be about any block producer that's found to be in provable breach in some capacity of the interim constitution in particular I'm referring to right now, although it could just as easily be once it's ratified as well, off the back of some of the discussions that have come off this with regards to what we as BPs can and cannot do.
Sorry, David, if I could interrupt you for a moment. I'm not sure if ZB is on the call or if they're not on the call, but we certainly won't have time to allow them a rebuttal to anything that you're presenting as far as evidence goes. Is there anything here agnostic of any particular issue that can be presented?
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely. Yeah, the entire thing is agnostic. So although I've merely given the evidence at the top relating to a current situation, which is what's prompted this discussion, however, down here is what the BPs need to discuss, and I'll run through the 5 actions because this could be related to any other block producer that is found to be in breach in some form of the Constitution. So I won't even necessarily go into that, although I would encourage people to stay informed. I believe we have at least 1 or 2 other BP candidates, or BPs rather, that are active that maybe are causing some degree of concern within the community. So the first point I would like the group to discuss and consider is what we as a group would want to do about a situation where we have a clear breach going forwards, because from all the discussions certainly I've been seeing throughout the community, the perceived collective inactivity is doing both the EOS community and ourselves no favours. They're rightly concerned, and I believe that we need to, as a group, at least show that we take this seriously, and hence one of the reasons for bringing this up is that we can have a first discussion regarding this. A second point was relating to the criteria by which we confirm that we should, as a group, what we should do as a group and how we would vote to enact. So examples could be anything. There are a number of degrees of breaching of compliance. After all, it can be something as relatively minor as a JSON not being compliant, right through to something as serious as vote buying or even more, in theory. And we therefore need to, as a group, understand how many chances we give, how long can a BP be deemed to be remain in breach before we decide that it's acceptable to act, and do we need, in theory, complete agreement from all the BPs, or can we go for a majority vote? And then it moves on to the discussions that were quite active within the channel when this first appeared about 4 or 5 days ago, relating to what we as a group can do in terms of prevention. So a range of concerns have been raised regarding our lack of actual capability to meaningfully enforce removal action of an active BP at present, and I suggest that we run through and review why that's the case. And then otherwise, it would be some steps to enable this enforcement in the future. So there has been discussion, after all, around pseudo power, and also there's also been the discussions around Block 1 stepping into vote and upping the number of the vote power to 50, which is, to my view, probably a requirement for that. And there are pluses and minuses of both those, and there may be other enforcement actions that we should talk through as well. But otherwise as well, what sort of action can be potentially be taken immediately? Because, as I say, the community are looking for us to lead in this situation. They see evidence in some cases of potential bad actors, and it's very much, I think, for us as a group to take that seriously and make sure that they understand we do take that seriously. So that's the purpose of this as an item. So starting with the first item on this, it was, what do we as a group do about a situation of where we believe that there is clear evidence of a breach and clear breaches going forward. Open to the group.
I'd like to point out that in the reg producer agreement, the threshold to actually disqualify a block producer from the top 21 is rather low. It simply states that if they are unable to be reached by whatever means that we as a group consent to, so there's that to consider. If a block producer cannot be reached by the ways that we normally communicate, they are they qualify to be disqualified.
There's a time frame on that too. I mean, it's not like if you can't be reached for an hour or something.
Of course, but there's not a time frame that's outlined. But obviously, you're not going to text somebody and start the clock.
Yeah, and maybe that could be clear. I think one of the original intents was that they would, if there was something going on and they were unreachable for a 24-hour period, then that was a potential disqualification. But I do not know the exact. I don't believe there's any specific times that have been actually put in there now.
Shouldn't we say that we will be trying to call the person at least 3 times during the day with to the contact address that we got, the phone number, and if that fails after like 3-4 times during 24 hours or let's say 36 hours, then we can go ahead. But a message is different from a call.
I totally agree, Paolo. And before we actually, I think maybe before we go into the details of, for example, that criteria that would be needed to be met to disqualify someone, we list out what exactly within the Constitution and the Reg Producer Agreement explicitly empowers block producers to self-govern and disqualify one another based on whatever criteria. If we had that in front of us to say, all right, here's the framework within which we are allowed to operate currently, we can better make the near-term decisions. And if we find that they are lacking, we can always figure out how do we go about changing those if it's community referendum, et cetera.
Kevin, I had put a lot of that together last week in the proposal in terms of what are the objective measures. We created a little subgroup. The problem was a lot of the objective things were very hard to do and measure without the consent of the third party. So that was kind of the roadblock we hit. But if we say that we're just going to try and do our best and see whatever is a clear breach, in our opinion, as a group, I think all that needs to be done is say, we're going to look for your contact information on Keybase, we're going to look for it on Telegram, we're going to look for the phone number, and we'll contact you in those 3 methods over 36 hours, 24 hours, 12 hours, whatever we agree to. And if they are not reachable, and if they have not given us that information, well, that's not on us, that's on them, because we're making open calls for that information all the time.
Well, that makes sense. And if we want to make that information available again, which I'm sure you already have, because I don't know if a call like this is the best place to debate the actual merits of it, but for everyone to go back and evaluate them on their own accord, then once we establish what the threshold is that needs to be met in order to disqualify a block producer, then the next question is what exact mechanisms are available to us to enforce such a threshold, and does anybody have insight into what those are, particularly?
It's in my proposal from last week.
So you covered it all.
Essentially.
Awesome.
So what we would need to find out as well is that's just one method, right? So if we can't reach the person, that's one of the potential, I guess, triggers for. But there are other triggers for. So just having one list of all the triggers for would be really good.
Okay, this is good because apologies, I wasn't on the call last week, so I haven't seen this, but I will have a review after this. That was going to be the next logical step from this, which is that we actually get this in writing and get collective agreement on the criteria. And it really then follows into the third point, though, which is what we as a group can actually do and not do in terms of our current capability with regards to removal of a BP that is collectively deemed to be in breach. So Michael Yates was fairly vocal for EOS DAC in explaining some of the lack of capabilities that we actually have. I think there's quite a wide misconception amongst the community that it's a very simple task for us at present to actually remove block producers as active reg producers, and it actually doesn't appear to be the case. So if somebody with perhaps more detailed knowledge of this side would like to briefly explain why, that would be probably helpful for the wider group who are maybe not as familiar. And can also anybody not speaking just put themselves on mute? I can get a bit of background noise. Thanks. As somebody with more of a detailed technical understanding could just give a speak up on this one, that would be helpful.
And if no one is willing to, that's okay. We have them listed out in Josh's proposal. If anybody else has a proposal that's been floating around that you believe that people should pay attention to as well, feel free to share, because again, you know, these are all just proposals until they're voted on chain in whatever method is most appropriate. It may be worth it to for everybody to make a point to go review it. I certainly will in more detail, and then for those groups to go make their own decision on how we enact it off of a call like this, and ultimately start to express our opinions on chain.
And perhaps we can also get some translation at this point, because we haven't translated since the beginning of the call.
Do you want me to jump in, David? You mentioned my name.
It would be helpful if you don't mind, just so that people understand, in your view, what BPs or what lack of capability they have at present to remove, let's say, a defined bad actor who is an active BP.
Yeah, so the method that we have to remove people is the RMV producer command, which will unregister a producer. It will not do anything other than null out their key, which means that they will be removed from the schedule. The thing is that they can just re-reg producer again as soon as we've unreg producered them. So really, reg producer is designed, I guess, for missing block producers who are not producing and can't be contacted. To save the chain, we can remove them before it gets too bad. But yeah, they can just re-register themselves. If we try to unregister them, they'll go off and re-register.
So the intent there is there's a good actor who is having technical issues and communication issues that we choose to remove, but is welcome back as soon as they get all their stuff together.
Yeah, so if we have a major chain problem and say 4 producers are missing, we may well decide to emergency remove them just to get the chain back producing. Because if we lose 7, then we're in real trouble. So we may want to prevent getting down to close to 7. But as soon as they're able to produce, they can re-register the producer.
Sorry, Paolo, can you mute everybody, please?
Thank you.
So Michael, go ahead. Sorry, James.
Oh, sorry. I think it's important that this document has added, somebody else brought it up, but this document has added a timeline. So we have a timeline there. So yeah, like we won't do anything for 36 hours, right? Well, we try to contact the supposedly bad actor. So I think that's one main thing I think this document's missing.
Yeah, I mean, remove producer them is a message to them that, you know, we're not very happy with what you're doing, and therefore we've removed you. But if they're not playing ball, then they'll just re-add themselves. A slightly more extreme version would be to null out their keys. We could essentially take over control of their producing account. But the self-voted whales wouldn't really have a problem with that, because they'll just create another account, change their votes, and they'll be back again. So,
just on that, Michael, I'm assuming we need to do that. We would need sudo.
No, we can remove producer with a 15 out of 21 signature.
No, I mean, and null out the keys.
Oh yeah, I mean, it makes it easier, but we could null out keys without sudo.
And there may be a limit to how far a bad actor is willing to go, right? So if we remove producer them, and then they say, okay, well, we're just going to re-register even though we're getting calls saying we're not happy with you and that there's a problem. So they don't address the problem, they re-reg producer. Now we null out their owner key. So at that point, if they have like 12 whale accounts voting for them, and all of a sudden all those guys shift all of their votes to another new producer account, well, that's pushing it pretty far, isn't it? And at that point, I mean,
I'd say pushing it far was to register another 3 accounts.
I agree. I'm just suggesting that, you know, we can continue to escalate as well. There are more steps we could take beyond that, right?
Yeah, I'd rather see political solutions rather than technical solutions.
I agree. Which is sort of my point. I'm not sure it'll get to that point where they're creating new producer accounts and shifting all their votes over. I don't know that it would have to get that far.
I think the real problem is that the most we can do is just give them a message. And if they still aren't willing to play ball, we can't stop them. Because if they're able to move all those votes and re-register a producer with a different account, that means they could do that with 15 accounts. And if they write a script for that, they can easily take over the network.
So couldn't we freeze all 15 accounts at that point?
Hey guys.
Hey, who's the man?
Hey.
I'd like to briefly comment on what you're discussing right now. The ability of 2/3 of the producers to kick out one of the minority producers was intended to be used in the event that they are actually down and not producing blocks. It was not intended to be used as a political weapon.
Yeah, we reviewed that.
Yeah, neither political nor disciplinary. It really is just that they're unable to complete their task.
Right, so that way the runner-up producer can take over and the network can resume, and then that's why all it takes to get back in is that they reset their key, which is kind of a proof of life kind of thing. They reset their key, they start producing blocks, everything's good. If they reset their key and they're still not producing blocks, now we've identified them as a malicious actor, and we'll just have to, I guess, automate the process of blocking them from resetting their key or something like that.
I guess Dan, what we're trying to do is somewhat define what a malicious actor is. The beginning of this conversation was to say are there block producers that are in violation of the reg producer agreement or the current constitution, and if they're in violation, those are considered malicious actors. It goes beyond the definition of failing to produce blocks in the current climate.
Sure. Under the current interim constitution, there's a lot more subjectivity in these things. So I'm here for a little bit, so I'd like to address some of the recent updates we just released for the system contract, if that's all right.
And just if there are any security issues, just know that the call is live streamed and recorded.
No security issues at this time. So we've got a new repo just for the system contract. It's GitHub EOSIO, EOSIO.contracts. and we just released version 1.1, and this includes updates to the token contract with respect to how RAM is built, and the ability to retire or burn tokens to remove them from supply. Burning tokens has an impact on the inflation rate because the inflation is based on percentage of current supply. So it's not sufficient just to send the tokens to an account that can't be accessed, because they're still counted as part of the supply. If you actually want to retire the tokens, you have to use the retire command, which will then do the opposite of the issue command. And along with that, we fixed some of the bugs where RAM billing, when an account first receives a balance, the person who sends it the money is the one that pays for the RAM, and we've changed that so that the EOSIO.RAM account was getting drained of its RAM whenever it sent money to people who were buying or selling RAM. It'd send the EOS to them, and they had a zero balance. The RAM account would get billed for that RAM. It would run out, and then that person would be unable to buy and sell RAM anymore. So we've got several fixes in there. One is that when you go to a zero balance, we don't free your balance record. We added a new action, close, which basically closes your account and frees the RAM that was used to store your balance. But by default, once you have a balance, other people, when you're buying or selling or transferring, you're never going to end up having that go back to zero. We added a new function to set RAM rate, which is the rate at which new RAM will be added on a per block basis. This is so that the block producers can set policy without having any major disruption to the price or any of the other concerns people had over the price. So the end result of that change will just be to slowly trickle in new RAM at whatever rate you guys decide, and we recommend 64 gigabytes a year, which is about 1 kilobyte per block, as the rate to set. From a technology perspective, that should be easily sustainable, and then if at any point in time it becomes unsustainable or we decide that we can sustain higher rates, then we can discuss changing the rate at that point in time. Along with that, we did change the multiplier. There's a multiply/divide by 1,000 in the Bancor math. We removed that. It does not change the price. It merely changes the rounding errors or potential for rounding errors due to very large or very small exponents. But the math is producing numbers that are the same under both the old and the new code. Are there any questions?
From Block One's perspective, with the added feature of slowly trickling in RAM supply, is that considered? I'm just trying to get an idea of like, okay, that's the fix, or is its attempt to fix, observe, iterate? Has any credence been given to some of the community proposals that have been floating around, or how are you viewing the long term?
Okay. We are listening and factoring in everything that everyone's saying, trying to figure out the best long-term solution to have a viable, competitive blockchain. Our goal is to have the largest capacity in both transactions per second and RAM that is possible of any blockchain, to make sure that EOSIO platforms are the best platform, are the cheapest platform for building new dApps. So the trickling in the RAM will have the effect of either generating hundreds of millions of dollars of, or EOS worth of revenue or tokens being taken out of circulation to fund the RAM or bringing the price down. So I think it'd be very difficult to sustain the price of RAM with a constant trickle in there without generating substantial new buying or demand for RAM. The thing to remember is that most of the current RAM was bought up at much lower prices in order to get up to the current market price. And as we trickle it in, that new RAM will be sold at the current price, which is substantially higher than where most of the current RAM that's in circulation was purchased. So it'll be a lot more difficult or require an order of magnitude more demand for RAM to maintain the current price. So we think that will lower that. With respect to account creation, we put a constant in the code that bills everyone 2 kilobytes is just a guesstimate of how much RAM each account would create or require. And then there's various other incidental things associated with each account, which takes, currently, each new account's billed for 3 kilobytes of RAM. We did some closer inspection on the code to get more precise numbers on how much RAM is being used per account, and determined that about 512 bytes is all that we're actually using on the back end to manage the account, which means we can reduce the billing by 1.5 kilobytes per account, which should lower the account creation costs by 50%, even at the current RAM price.
So that value was hard-coded instead of being calculated out of the actual storage use? Is that what you say?
It was a value put in there to account for things that aren't billed as part of the tables or the process for the smart contracts. So we just assumed that there was some overhead. We picked a number that we thought was small before we knew the price of RAM. And that gave us, we wanted to be conservative so that we didn't underbill for RAM. But since RAM is such a precious commodity and it's a barrier to onboarding, we decided to get a little bit more precise. 512 still has a little bit of margin of safety on there for different things, but it's much, much closer to the actual RAM usage that's outside of the tables that are accessible to smart contracts. What we will be able to do is update the system contract to automatically credit all accounts with the additional RAM. And because this billed RAM isn't actually consumed RAM, we will increase the RAM supply for this billing, so basically cancel out. We create the RAM's already reserved on the back end. It's not actually being used in the shared memory, so it doesn't impact our hardware requirements in any way. And that will be a system contract update that we can deploy. Between those two features, we believe that this will lower the new account creation costs substantially going forward.
Dan, can you confirm, you said that each new account currently is being billed 2 or 3 kilobytes?
We have a constant that's billing 2 kilobytes plus some variable things that are billed separately. That constant was an overestimate. So currently they're being consumed 3 kilobytes is what's being billed. We're reserving 4 kilobytes or 8 kilobytes depending upon how much spare capacity you want to give the new account. And under the new model, we're saying that each new account will only consume about 1.5 kilobytes. But since we can't change that constant without a hard fork, we will just give each new account an additional 1.5 kilobytes and create an additional 1.5 kilobytes of RAM in the market. But since that RAM can never be sold because it's locked up in the account, it has no impact on it. So it's a safe fix.
Thank you, Dan.
Dan, I'd like to understand the rationale for the closing of the account. So you said we wouldn't remove the row when we get down to 0. What's the rationale for that?
Because if you have an account and you get to 0 and then you receive money, someone else is paying for RAM. And so there's a general desire that the person you should pay for your own RAM on your own account, and it's not easy for someone to send you money. Hey, where am I going to store your balance? You don't have a place for me to store your balance, and I'm not going to pay for your RAM. So, so what airdrops find is they have to pay for the RAM of all their users when they send tokens.
So what happens is then they would send us some money, and if they would consume our RAM because the airdroppers send us stuff. Is that right?
I would not consume your RAM. What we're going to do is require you to open an account before receiving a balance. So if you want to receive, you have to basically prepare a place to receive it with your authority directly, and then other people can add to it, because changing the value in your account doesn't consume RAM.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're basically killing airdrops and making air grabs the default.
It depends on which token contract you're using. We're talking about the EOS system token contract. And what we're really trying to do is, once you've claimed it, we don't want you to go back into an unclaimed state accidentally just because you transferred all your money away. So we're making it a explicit, hey, I want this RAM back. So it's just a two-step process.
Okay.
Dan, would it be possible, it's really great to have you on the call, by the way, and Representative Block 1, would it be possible for you guys to put together an agenda item for these updates? Because I think you said a lot of really important things here, but I would like to be able to read them in text so that I can review them and talk to our community about them. If you guys could implement an agenda item, we would definitely prioritize that, because I think we had planned to have a lot of other people talk at this point, but we're running out of time, because what you're bringing is really important and we want to hear it, but without it in text, it's hard for us to really review word by word what you're saying.
We'll be releasing a text statement that covers this information ahead. So that's the two things that I have right now. I'm here to answer questions, but otherwise I'll get off the agenda.
Thank you very much, Dan. If no one has any other questions, Dan, thank you again for joining. We'll look out for the text update, and there is one agenda item that is critical to moving the state of governance and the chain forward. So I want to apologize to Sukesh and Ben. We're gonna skip over you for now. And if Josh, if you would be able to bring us through for the last 8 minutes the update on the referendum contract, where we stand, current timeline, etc.
Alex, you want to take this one actually, since you have the best understanding?
Okay, sorry. We're at what now? The other point?
Skipping to referendum contract update.
Okay. Can you share the screen? Can you share the screen? Do you have the document there? I can give a run through of the evolution of the EOS-IO forum thing. So there's been a lot of work by Michael Fletcher. He's started writing a few contracts that would do referendums on chain. We quickly figured out that it would be a little bit complex, maybe to find the right way to do that, link it with the voted weights and all of that. So there's a small group led in big part by Daniel from EOS Nation. He's been doing the project management there, so we've all synced up around. And we sort of focused on EOS-IO forum for the first shot. So I know there's a lot of things that have been already building. There's a guy that built a Reddit on top of EOS forum tests. There's that Reddit thing. It uses the messaging and posts that Dan originally put in that contract, where I just added a few things and tweaked it for referendum. So one of the next release proposal has on-chain storage of questions. And that's a very important difference. Like when we have questions we want to have posted, like you this morning, Kevin, you can add a proposal. It looks a lot like the multi-sig proposal, right? Where you send on your own scoped table with a name like question A, or are you present, or something like that. And then you have a title and some JSON, and then people can watch your account if they want to know what you're proposing. So with that, we can have questions that are asked by the BPs that would be storing a question in the EOS-IO scope. If we all sign 15 to 21 that we want a question stored there, most of the UIs around, when we're talking with Greymass also on their wallet and a few others that like try to figure out how we're going to present that to the public, having like an on-chain question is going to be a lot easier. So you have one place to read, and it will cost RAM just to store that blob. But it also means that any community will be able to use that for their own referendum. I'm thinking, let's say Everpedia wants to query their users, they can send a question in their account, the Everpedia, I don't know, account. And then their community can go and look at the questions and answer them. And it's easy to filter the output because it's the vote. So there's a vote thing that also sends a response to that particular question, right? So when you're asking the question earlier, instead of posting random text, and we've reduced the vote value to a Boolean. So you have the question, you have the proposal, the name of the proposer, and the vote value. So it's very straightforward for what we're trying to do right now. And there's also a provision for vote JSON if we want to specify more complex things. So that's up in the EOS.io forum. It's there. It's yet untested, but it's shipped in a way. So I think we can try it out. Like Igor, he sent the EOS forum test, and I think we can adapt the different thing until we put it in EOS.io.forum, right? As we voted last time. And the last thing is what? Yeah, UI being built. Yeah, okay, the format. So the format of the questions right now, there's 3 proposition, slightly more complex. I know if we want translation and the JSON is more complex, or we just want a big markdown and the question is in there with all the information we need to take decision, timings, and whatever. And that's what us BP would be working on, that transaction that stores the question on the chain. And when we're all ready, we would sign 15 to 21. And then the tooling around is already being built, but that needs a little bit of work. Dennis from EOS Nation is also working on that. And we'll have most probably 2 or 3 implementation of off-chain tally. Are there any questions?
Maybe I misunderstood, but in the beginning, did you say that to have a question be stored, which is essentially be proposed, it must achieve 15 out of 21?
Right, so for the account EOS.io, which I assume, let's say a wallet wants to display questions, it's probably going to default to EOS.io because it's representing the BPs. The BPs represent that account, right? Or vice versa. So for us to get a question in that scope, we'll need to sign 15 of 21. But if you want to publish a question on your account, EOS New York IO, then you can do that on your account with your own authority, right? Just like the multi-sig system. We just copied and pasted the multi-sig bit or propose and unpropose.
I know that we have not done a good job at translating, but maybe we could salvage this last part. Is there anybody willing to translate what Alex just said, or the general summary of what he said for our Chinese colleagues?
I can do a quick translation, just a summary. 这个关于全民公投的这个事情呢，其实已经有一个工作小组做了好长一段时间，那包括 EOS Canada、EOS Nation 还有好几个节点都有参与到。那现在讨论的一个解决方案呢是基于最早的那个简单版的 EOS Forum Test。我这个刚才在讨论的时候就有人通过那个去做签到的一个过程。那这一个 contract 就会演变到我们下一步要发布的这个 EOS Forum。那具体的这个有一个 Google Doc 详细讲了。它的工作方式还是比较简单的，就是有2种模式，一种模式是BP 发起的这个公投，那它会放到 EOS.io.forum 这个账号下，那它需要多签才能发布进去。那但这个代码呢，如果你想要使用它去发布一个也是同样的一个问卷啊，或者请大家投票的方式的话，你可以发到你自己的账号下，那你就不需要多签。That's it.
Are there any questions? There's 98 people on the call, but like 3 or 4 talked since the beginning.
I'd like to make a suggestion, if that's okay. I think these calls would be far more efficient. If we don't build proposals on these calls, but come with already completed proposals and then discuss those proposals. Just for the sake of efficiency, there's no way 100 people together can build a proposal. And whether this is done a single VP building it or in a subcommittee, that's really up to the VPs. And on another note, on subcommittees, if we're gonna be doing things in subcommittees, I do think we should have non-VP community members involved as well, for the sake of, first of all, hearing their insight and just for increased transparency. Those are just my thoughts on how
Those are good points, and they're actually what happened in this very proposal. You have the text document there, and there are a few in the channel referendum smart contract. There's a few, David Moss is there and a few other people also. So that is respecting.
So I was more talking about the second item we discussed. It wasn't a complete proposal. We were trying to come to an understanding for how to solve that problem, but there's no way we can follow this.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Alex. I agree. I think that just for the sake of efficiency, it's best if we have something that's a little bit more baked before it makes it into this group.
This was great, though. The subcommittee went off and did something and then came back with the document and said, here's the document. This is what we're working on. That was really wonderful.
Yeah, James.
I think the EOS forum still lacks public scrutiny. It seems like there's still no good way to see the data. Like everything on the EOS forum thing has been about, here's how you get the data in, and with a lack of here's how you get the data out for the public.
Right. So
and I know it's possible. And the document I see at the end, the document sort of hand waves around it. It's just something that I'm not in the group, I understand. And so I just, my message for the public is to say, hey, when you're doing this, try and make sure there's a good way for any average Joe who doesn't know how to code to just go in and see the data.
Yeah, I agree with you, James. I think the other thing to remember, though, is that we, it's easy to beat ourselves up on these calls every day about things we're not doing right. But I think every now and then you got to remember, like, hey, I just checked the chain, and for the first time we have 23, signed transactions. We did something right.
Yeah, it's really cool.
As a group, we actually did something on chain, which is what the public actually wants to see, right? So it's one step forward. But yes, I agree with you. Because we need to improve on it, but let's start somewhere.
And because it's on chain, anybody can write it, right? So
yeah, exactly.
I completely agree with everything that everyone said. A good format for these meetings, should they continue at all, is to not debate the merits of a proposal, but to at least outline it and then take questions. So if you're not ready to present a fully fleshed out idea, you are not ready to present. I think that's a great suggestion. So in the interest of time, it is 10:02. Again, I apologize to Ben and Sukesh that we were not able to get to your agenda items. I don't know if Dan is still on the call, but if we are able to bake those in prior, we'll be able to better manage our time. Unless there are any last questions, we can adjourn the call.
Yeah, I just have one comment about skipping the agenda item. It's totally fine. I think it would just be great if, speaking of subcommittees, anyone who wants to join a subcommittee to discuss EOS emergency planning, to click that link and sign up on the document, and then we'll create an open Telegram about that.
Awesome. Great idea. Great idea.
Okay.
And for the next call, it'll be EOS New York to host and start EOS to scribe, just based on current ranking.
So we have minutes that we will be releasing soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yep. All right. Thanks. Bye.